now, and Sean is waiting. I'm very sorry about it. Sean, are
No,
you
no,
there?
not at all.
And I'm going to read the biography right now. And this is actually a quotation, so I'm going to read you what Sean told us. By day, I work in the Hollywood movie industry as an editor. I have credits on such films as Avengers Infinity War, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Godzilla vs. Kong, and Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1. There you go. There is someone who appreciates Twilight, maybe. By night, I run the YouTube channel called The Vampire's Castle, which is entirely about vampires, and in specific, it's about writing and storytelling in the vampire genre. And indeed, if you have time, or you can look at our website of Children of the Night, and you can find the links to Sean's website. It's really, really interesting. A lot of fantastic research on vampires and interviews with people. So check it out, definitely. I had the pleasure of meeting Sean last year in Wales, was it? And we went for a vampire film festival, and we met in person for the first time. So I hope you stay with us forever, because we're very interested in your opinions now. So Sean is going to talk about Hollywood and his work today, and we can't wait. And over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. That was an excellent introduction. I appreciate that. Yeah, let me share my PowerPoint. It is an absolute pleasure to be here and be able to talk to you guys. This is sort of one of the singular events that I look forward to every year, and being able to listen to such smart people talk about vampires in very niche-y, obscure topics is just absolute crack for me. And part of the reason, which, as you know, as Magda just said in my bio, is that I am not a scholar. I'm not a professor. I'm not a researcher. I'm actually not even that smart. I'm just a dude who actually has who runs a YouTube channel called The Vampire's Castle, and like Magda said, it's about vampire storytelling, and so I interview a lot of authors and have a lot of resources up there for people who are writing their own vampire stories. But when Magda invited me to come and talk, I first of all did a little Scooby dance because I was so excited about that. But also realized that there's very little that I'm going to be able to tell you guys about vampires that you don't already know. So I thought, since there are so many people involved with this Congress who are professors of media studies or film studies or American pop culture studies, that it might be more interesting for me to talk about my day job, which, as Magda said, is working in Hollywood in the movie business. And I had forgotten that I had listed off several of my credits in my bio, but here's just kind of a quick course sampling of several of the movies that I've worked on. And specifically, I work in, by the way, this whole talk is not going to be me talking about myself. It's just to give you a little background of where I'm coming from. So I work in what we refer to as visualization, which is essentially part of the pre-production stage of making movies. And it is specifically designing the big visual effects and expensive stunt sequences and fight sequences in major, blockbuster movies. Because those cost a lot of money, and they're incredibly intricate, and they take forever to shoot. And so the company that I work for gets hired to design what those scenes are going to be like in advance with the director, the producers, and help to visualize all of that. And I'm an editor, so that means that I cut this stuff together, and we iterate lots of versions until either the filmmakers are happy or they run out of their budget to plan stuff. Either or. But then they wind up with a blueprint that they can then take to all their department heads and say, okay, here's what we're going to make. And it's basically like what looks like a video game version of all of the scene, the big expensive scenes that they're going to go shoot. So that's what I do for a living, and I just want to, as Magda said, I managed to get a screen credit on one vampire movie in the 30 years that I've been working in Hollywood, and this is the one, and I could not be more proud that I've managed to work on a Twilight movie. I'm very, very excited about that. So I thought perhaps in terms of what I could talk about today, it might be interesting for me to sort of give you sort of my perspective on a certain element of the movie industry as it sort of pertains to vampire movies. From a guy who is sort of in the trenches. And if there were a totem pole of people who are decision makers in the movie industry, if these are the decision makers, I'm sort of way down here. So I'm not the guy who makes any decisions, but I have seen a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of friends who have told me a lot of stories. So I thought that I would take all that information today and apply it to talking about this movie. Because this came out this summer. It's sort of top of mind. I think most of us either saw this movie or were at least aware of this movie coming out. And I know that several people in this Congress have already discussed Last Voyage of the Demeter, so I won't, necessarily talk about.
Luego le pregunto.
Oh, okay. Sorry, somebody is not muted there. But
I already
anyhow,
muted him. No worries.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. So basically, what I thought we would talk about is how Last Voyage of the Demeter came out and was kind of seen as a failure as a movie. And in Hollywood specifically, when somebody talks about whether a movie was a success or a failure, they're usually talking about money, whether the movie made its money back, or made the studio a lot of money. And so I thought we would talk today about sort of why this might be, and to give you some just a couple of statistics about Last Voyage of the Demeter. The production budget on it was $40 million, and there was an additional budget that goes with that usually is never reported, but that is what's called the P&A budget, which is basically an advertising budget, which is what is spent in order to get people into the theater. It pays for the trailers that show up in movie theaters, on YouTube, on TikTok, billboards, posters on the sides of buses, that kind of thing. And the promotion and advertising budget for any movie is the same amount of money as the budget for the movie. So I think we can safely assume that the P&A budget for Last Voyage of the Demeter was probably also $40 million. And because the movie industry is all about that opening weekend, what is the box office take of the opening weekend? That is the most important metric as to in deciding whether a movie is successful or is a failure. And so obviously they want to, make their money back, of course, but then they also want
recording in progress.
And in order to greenlight a sequel, they want for the movie to make a certain amount of money, and every movie has some secret number that the producers are hoping it's going to hit money-wise in order to greenlight that next film. And I don't know what it was for Last Voyage of the Demeter. I'm guessing it was somewhere around the number of 160 million. So if Last Voyage of the Demeter were to make 160 million-ish, chances are they would have greenlit a sequel by the time Sunday rolled around of that opening weekend. So, how well did Last Voyage do? Its domestic box office was $6 million. And then it also brought in a worldwide box office of an additional $6 million, so that put it at around $12 million for its opening weekend, which is far short of the 160 million, and is why Last Voyage is seen as a spectacular failure. But that's only in terms of the box office. And it's interesting to me because, as I'm sure any of you who saw this movie, my personal take on this film is that it was actually great. Like, it was well directed, it was visually very compelling, it looked rich, there was a lot of texture to it, the casting was good, the acting was good, the script I thought was really good. So there's the monster looked amazing. So this movie was ostensibly a good film. So why didn't it make its money back at the movie theater? And that is what we're going to talk about today in this talk, which I have titled The Perilous Road from Idea to Finished Movie, where I thought I would sort of give you a look inside sort of the Hollywood machine and talk about sort of all of the pitfalls along the way that a movie can go through from the moment that it is begun to the moment where it comes out, and how that can affect whether it makes its money back or not. So that's what this is about. Now, I should actually say that I did not work on Last Voyage of the Demeter. I don't actually even know anyone who did. So I don't have any special insider information as to that movie. But what I'll be sharing with you is sort of my insider information of the industry and sort of how that pertains. But I do need to just quickly make a couple of caveats here, because I am under an NDA for the company that I work for, and I've been under NDAs for all of the companies that I've worked for. So I can't actually tell you guys any stories about any of the actual movies that I worked on. So all of these are going to be information that was either reported in the trade magazines, or these are things that I witnessed without working on them, or these are based on conversations that I've had with friends in the industry who have told me anecdotes about some crazy stuff that went down. I'm not going to use any actual names of any studios or real people, just to protect everybody. And I also want to caveat by saying that the majority of people who I have worked with in the movie industry are absolutely wonderful people. It is a fantastic industry filled with people who are just inherently creative, and by extension of that, really, really neat people. The sort of the caricature of the screaming director who is a complete asshole is not something that I think I have ever witnessed. And in addition to that, every producer that I've ever met has been really nice, and strangely really funny too. I don't know how those two go hand in hand, but they do. So those are sort of the caveats that I just wanted to basically give you the perspective of what you're about to hear. So in starting, we have to start with sort of where a movie comes from. And that is and that goes to somebody who I know, who I want to introduce you to, who is my friend Brad. Now, Brad is not his actual name. It's obviously not his picture. We're just going to call him Brad. But my friend Brad is what they refer to as a development director, or a vice president of development. And what that means is that he works for a production company that makes movies. And his job is to find properties that would make a good movie for the production company. And what that particular task is called optioning. And optioning is where a a movie company will essentially pay a certain amount of money to have permission to make a movie about something. And so books can be optioned, it can be graphic novels, it can be video games, it can be just about anything. It could be a blog, it could be a podcast, it could be somebody's life story. But these, the option is something that that basically is spending a small amount of money for the chance to make a much larger movie. And my friend Brad, in his role as development director, reads about a screenplay a day, Monday through Friday. He listens to people's pitches all day long, and then on the weekends he's expected to read about 4 screenplays a day for Saturday and Sunday. And when he was telling me this, I was like, oh my God, dude, like, what kind of life is that? And he basically told me that, you know, there are maybe 30 guys in all of Hollywood who do this job. And there are a lot of people who want to do it. So he's like, in order for me to stay, you know, ahead of the curve, this is what I've got to do. So if that gives you an idea of how many projects that just Brad is looking at, he only, over the course of a year, will probably put up like maybe 12 projects that he lifts up to the producer above him and says, I think these are what we're looking for. And so at that point, if the producer looks at them and is like, yep, I think this works well with sort of who we are as a production company, and I think we can make money off of this, then they will pay the optioning fee and they will go into development. So they will essentially acquire the project. Once they do that, this is what kicks off the whole process, and starts to divert the movie away from whatever the original idea was. At this point, the original creator, be that, you know, the author or the original game company or the original publisher of a work, they are no longer involved. They have basically taken their money and they have gone away, and now it is in the hands of the filmmakers. And development is where they take a movie or they take a project and they say, okay, what do we need to do to this in order to make a good movie out of it? And I should also say that no one in Hollywood is trying to make a bad movie. They really do want to make good movies, and that largely has to do with you know, the art of it. But ultimately, what it really has to do with is the money of it, because any given movie can cost anywhere from, you know, $10 million for a small independent film, all the way up to like $200 million for a big visual effects blockbuster in the theater. And so the development process is to try and take essentially a 500-page novel and figure out, like, how do we make this into a 2-hour movie that will then go into the theaters and make us all of our money back. So in development, there are a number of ways that a project can change. And this is not always the case, but it is a pitfall of the development process. So one anecdote that to share is Twilight. So when the first book or two were out, you know, Stephenie Meyer was writing the books, and these books were really starting to take off. Like, they were starting to generate some heat. They weren't the worldwide household name phenomenon that they became yet, but some producer out there saw the numbers of the number of people who were buying the book, number of sales, and said, oh, that looks like a good one. Let's go acquire that. And so they went and negotiated like however much money they paid for the rights to make a movie for Twilight. And so they then took that option and they went off in a vacuum. No Stephenie Meyer or her agent, like they were no longer part of the process. This producer found a home for it at a particular studio and developed the project. And by the time it came time to decide whether or not to make the movie, the story had changed to where it was about a group of high school kids who were all on the same track and field team who fought crime in the middle of the night using night vision goggles. Twilight. So they didn't actually wind up making that movie, and the rights reverted back to Stephenie Meyer, and she was like, wow, I'm never doing that again. And so the books blew up, and a whole, army of producers just basically were just like crashing on the rocks trying to get the option to make the movies. And it wasn't until the guy who eventually would make the films at Summit came to her and was like, I understand you had a bad experience before. I promise you we will make these movies exactly what you have in the books. We'll bring you on as a producer. You'll have say over the script. You'll have input on the casting. You'll get money on the back end, all of these things. And so then she did option the movie for probably quite a bit more money at that point than the first time. But that's what can happen in development. So that's sort of the first way that a movie can sort of start to go off the tracks. But in development, they hire a screenwriter, and that screenwriter, gets to work on the screenplay, adapting it, trying to take a video game that's 80 hours long and turn it into a 2-hour movie that is itself an innate thing. And this usually happens during development, but they can also hire the screenwriter after the movie gets greenlit. Greenlighting means, okay, we have spent our $30,000 to $50,000 on development. We now are prepared. We feel confident about what we've come up with. We're prepared to spend $200 million on this movie now. Everybody go. Start hiring people. Let's start making this. So sometimes the screenwriter comes in at that point. But the screenwriter never talks to an original author. The screenwriter potentially is not the only screenwriter on the project. A lot of times somebody writes a movie, and then they leave and a different screenwriter is brought in, and they take portions of the movie and they pull them out and they rewrite them and stick them back in. And then maybe there's a third or a fourth screenwriter. They can bring in somebody who's just a comedy screenwriter to punch up the dialogue to make the movie a little funnier. So by the time you get to actually shooting the movie, it could be kind of a chimera, like a hodgepodge of different writers all within the same script. And that can start to sort of dilute an idea down. And I would love to say that you finish a script and then you go and you start shooting it, but that's not always the case. In fact, a lot of times the script is still being written while they're shooting. And it is not uncommon for a group of people to show up to set having no idea what they're going to shoot that day, to receive a handful of pages that the screenwriter and the producer and director wrote the night before. And then while they start shooting those pages, the screenwriter is busy writing the pages for the next day. That is obviously not an optimal situation. That's not what you want, but sometimes that does happen. So those are sort of some of the pitfalls that can happen at the screenplay level. Obviously, a director is hired to helm the movie, and what happens here is that once a producer has the project, and they're going to make the movie, they start bringing in directors to sort of pitch, what would you do with this movie if you were directing it? And this is the point at which I should probably tell you that in my time in the movie business, I have spent time with a lot of directors, and I think they kind of fall into two categories, is sort of my take on it. The first category is the director who is an artist. And this is a director who really cares about the movie. They care about the creative integrity of the movie. They want for it to look amazing, for it to make sense, for it to make the audience feel something. And they will go to the ends of the earth to make that happen. And the other type of director is what I refer to as the mercenary director. And this is not that Jason Statham is a director or even a mercenary, but he just happened to be the best looking mercenary that I could find a picture of. So that's why he's in this slide. But the mercenary director is somebody who doesn't really care what the movie is. They are there to direct it because they just love directing movies. But maybe they really like making a lot of money and telling people what to do and hanging out with famous people and traveling the world and being known as a director. So both of these types of guys will come in and and girls will come in and sort of pitch what they want to do. And for the art director, the artist directors, they'll put together a gorgeous pitch book, which is an actual, like, a physical book that has artwork and concept artwork and references to other movies and stuff like that. And they'll say, this is what I would do with your movie. And the producers look at it and they're like, oh my God, this looks really great. This is fantastic. Yeah, this looks really neat. Thank you for coming in and talking to us. And then that director leaves, and then the producers turn to one another and they're like, I wonder if that director who just had a really big opening weekend for his movie this last weekend would come in and talk to us. And then they bring that person in, and then they handed them the lookbook from the previous director and say, we would like you to make this movie. And that is something that, according to my director friends, happens all the time. But there actually can be much worse versions of that. And there was a period in the industry. This doesn't really happen too much anymore, as far as I know. I haven't heard of it happening in a while. But there was a while where there was a practice by a couple of producers who would hire an artist director to come in and make the movie, ostensibly, and the director would oversee all of the production artwork and the building of the sets and the planning out of all of the camera moves and the casting of the film and all this stuff, and get it ready and prepped to start shooting, and then suddenly get fired from the project like 3 weeks before they were going to start shooting. And the producer would then replace that director with a mercenary director, drop them in and say, okay, the movie is ready to go. All you have to do is just direct it now. Walk on set and say action. And when I asked a producer friend who doesn't do this, I was like, what is that about? And he was like, well, if you have a director who is an artist, who is really, passionate about the material, they are going to fight for that material. They're going to fight for their vision on the movie. And if the money people don't want to fight with the director, they'll just cut him out after he's done all of the prep work and then bring in a guy who doesn't care about the artistic integrity of the movie. They're just going to shoot it the way you tell them to shoot it because they don't care. And so, because that's not what they get out of directing. So that is a process that, like I say, it doesn't really take place anymore, as far as I can tell. But that was certainly something that was happening, and that can wreak havoc on how a movie comes out in the end. And then there's also there's casting. And obviously, if your casting director is, doing their job, then they're going to cast some amazing actors in your movie. But one of the things to bear in mind is that, one actor is going to make a movie different than another actor is going to in terms of their performance. And so, like, on the vampire front, we're all very familiar with Coppola's Dracula and Keanu Reeves playing Jonathan Harker. But originally, that particular part was offered to Christian Slater. And that wouldn't necessarily have made the movie itself different, but that would have been a very different take on the character. And the character of Jonathan Harker is ostensibly is sort of what sets up the first third of the movie. So just, little decisions like that can have a huge impact on the making of a movie. Additionally, there is the additional pitfall where if you are making a movie that is does not have as big a budget as the huge ones, and you want to hire somebody who is sort of outside of your pay of what you can afford to pay, a star will come onto a project for less if they are also made a producer on the project. And that gives them, you know, all sorts of creative input and, you know, money on the back end of it and all those things. It's a great way to get a name for your poster that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. But that can come with some dangers. There was one movie that I witnessed happening where there was a huge star who was attached, and they went through all of the principal photography of the movie, and by the time they got to the editing room, the actor was in the editing room all the time because they were a producer on the film. And there was an entire subplot in the movie that revolved around a secondary character, and the star was like, you know what, just get rid of that whole subplot. This movie's about me. This movie's about my character. It's not about his character. So moments like that can really change the outcome of a movie. And there was another friend of mine who was producing a smaller film and got an actress who was an excellent actress and very well regarded. And she came in, and sort of one of her stipulations was, if I come and make this movie and I'm a producer on the movie, my boyfriend needs to come on as the screenwriter. Because he's trying to be a screenwriter. And they already had a script, but they were like, well, we really want this person to be in our movie, so yeah, how bad could it get? Well, turns out the dude couldn't really write. And so he really started destroying their script, and they were suddenly in a position where they were like, we actually have to fire this actress just to get her terrible screenwriter boyfriend off the project. So those kinds of situations can happen. Then we get to actual principal photography, and this is where the movie actually starts shooting. And as I'm sure you can guess, there are all kinds of things that can happen in principal photography that can change the outcome of a movie at the end. Everything from a hurricane coming sweeping through and like removing the standing sets that are outside, at the very least shutting down production in a community. You can have things like a global pandemic can stop a movie from shooting. You can have an actor can break their ankle on set, and that takes like 6 months to heal to the point where they can actually get back and start acting again. And in a situation like that, you lose your entire crew because they can't just go home and not earn any money for 6 months waiting for the actor to heal. So they have to all go find different projects. And by the time the actor is back, you have to hire on entirely new people. And you're still making the same movie, but when you put together a completely different brain trust, that can make a different film than what you originally set out to do. So things like that can happen. I also, a friend of mine worked on a movie where, a massive film, where the star, the third day of production, just didn't show up. They burned $1 million, everybody just sitting around doing nothing. And then they didn't have that day in the can, which meant that all the assistant directors had to go and scramble and figure out like, okay, what can we move later in the schedule to, get all the stuff that we missed today? And then the next day, the actor didn't show up again until finally halfway through the day, he came in and sat down in the makeup chair. And after 15 minutes, he was like, all right, that's enough. And he got up and he walked over to the set. They did a quick run through. They did one take. They started setting up for a different angle, and he just vanished and was gone for the rest of the day. They got one take out of that day. So stuff like that can happen that will then cause you to start going through and changing your script to try and deal with a problem that is immediate on the project. After principal photography is over, then we get into post-production. This is all the editing, visual effects, sound design, all that sort of thing. And you would think that at this point, there probably wouldn't be anything that would derail the movie at this point, but there is all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't come up too often as a problem, but part of the post-production process is that is something called test screenings, where you take the edit of your movie and you put it in a theater and you have a bunch of people watch it. And they give you all of their input as to what they liked, what they didn't like, and all of that gets collated and tabulated in a mathematical way that winds up giving you a score between 1 and 100%. And obviously you're going for that 100% number. I'm not sure any movie has ever scored that in a test screening, but that's sort of what you're going for. And so whatever your score is, then you go back to your edit, and you kind of change some stuff, and then you screen it again for a different group of people, and you hope that your score goes up. If your score goes down, you know you made some bad decisions, and you have to go back in, put everything back the way it was, and try to figure out some new things. So the movie is still a living, breathing thing at this point. And one anecdote, just to let you know sort of what can happen in post-production, is a friend of mine was a director on sort of a mid-level sort of actiony, visual effectsy kind of movie. It was probably a $100 million movie. And he was, you know, they'd finished photography, they were in the editing room, he was there with his editor, and they were working on the movie, and they started getting in visual effects shots from the visual effects company. There were shots that were not in their edit, but it was using footage from the film, and somebody had clearly paid for the visual effects company to work on them. And they were like, what is this stuff? How is this happening? And the director got up and he walked around and discovered that down the hall, there had been a second editing bay set up. And there was a second editor who had secretly been hired. And the producer was sitting in that bay with that editor all day, cutting his own version of the movie, and then sending their shots out to the visual effects companies to be worked on, and then cutting them in. And so then they would do test screenings with the director's version and then with the producer's version. And every single time, the director's version scored way higher in terms of audience response. So the producer would say, well, okay, we'll go with your version on this, but we already paid for all these visual effects shots to be done, so you have to stick them in your movie somehow. So that sort of thing, that sort of skullduggery can happen and can change the course of how a movie comes out. Then we get into the advertising side of it, and the advertising is, as I was talking about before, the P&A budget goes towards this, the promotion and advertising, and the advertising group is usually not really connected to the movie at all. They're connected to the distributor, and they're, depending on the deal that the producer has made, they could have a lot of say over it, or they might not. But the advertising people have to look at a movie and say, okay, what do we use from this? How do we come at this in a way that's going to get butts in seats? How are we going to get people into the theater to watch this? And then they start making trailers, and they start coming up with poster designs and catchphrases for the movie and that kind of thing. And that can go very well, or it can go very poorly. And I'm sure everybody here can think of, an advertising campaign for a movie where you're just like, oh my God, whose idea was that? That's terrible. But it can also go the other direction. So like there was a movie that came out some years ago where the advertising team made this amazing trailer. Like the trailer was outstanding, and it was funny, and it was witty, and it was irreverent, and it was just tonally really cool. And it took the internet by storm. And the whole audience was like, oh my God, I did not even care about this movie 5 minutes ago, but now I have to see this film. And that is exactly what you want. The problem was, that was not the film they had made. The film that they had made was deadly serious. And now the audience was expecting this irreverent action comedy. And so the filmmakers had to go back and do reshoots to make some funny scenes to stick into an otherwise serious film. And applying band-aids like that doesn't always work. So that's an instance where exceptionally good advertising can also change the outcome of a movie. Then we come to counter programming, which is the release date of the film. And when you are releasing a big testosterone-filled action movie on a particular weekend, you're only going to get a portion of the audience in to see that. So you another studio will counter program that weekend with a movie that is going after a completely different demographic. So that sets up sort of almost kind of like a competition for who makes how much money on opening weekend. The most spectacular version of this, I'm sure you're all way ahead of me on this, but there was this summer was the counter programming of Barbie and Oppenheimer releasing on the same weekend. And this is ostensibly two very different audiences. So these movies were not going to probably cannibalize too much from one another, but they do cannibalize somewhat because it depends on essentially date movies, or if your kids are coming with you, you're going to see one movie over the other. So this can also affect what the box office for a movie's opening weekend can be. And then we've got world events. So you can have something can happen that weekend that was unexpected, like an entire blackout of the Eastern Seaboard. That can mean that, you know, people in 5 or 6 states just don't go out to the movies that weekend. And that can really tank your box office. There's all kinds of things like, here's an example from a movie that I did actually work on. And I think I can talk about this not only because it was a very long time ago, but also everybody kind of did the right thing, I think. So, and this was a movie called Ocean's 11. And there's a scene in the movie that takes place around it's a plot point about a casino being demolished. And we did a visual effects, this was back when I worked in visual effects. And we did a shot of the New York casino being demolished. They'd gotten permission from New York to use their casino to be the one that would be demolished in the movie, and the whole thing, we finished it and it looked great. And then about 3 weeks before the movie was going to come out in theaters, 9/11 happened. And suddenly it was going to be an exceptionally poor taste to have a shot in the movie where an effigy of New York gets demolished and collapses in a big cloud of debris. So we went in and changed that shot to just be sort of a generic casino that doesn't actually exist. And we redid the whole thing and did the demolition of that. So there are things like that can happen just in the broader world that can, at the last minute, either change something that has to happen in the movie, or if it's something that can't be changed, a movie will just go off of the slate and wait for 6 months before it comes out again, in which case you're running into a completely different box office environment for a completely different weekend that can affect your money. So that sort of thing can happen too. And all of these things, any combination of all of these things that I've talked about, can result in not very many people going to see the movie on that opening weekend. And if a movie comes out after 1,000 people have worked on it for 2 years and it doesn't make its money back, then somebody's got to get blamed for that. And it's usually the director. That's part of what the director signs on for, is to either get the credit for it doing well or the blame if it doesn't do well. And any of those things that can happen along the way will affect my friend Brad. He can get blamed for it after the movie comes out for not having picked the right project. So that's to sort of give you some perspective on what everyone in the movie industry is sort of like what is the thing that is looming over everyone's shoulder. So when a movie doesn't do well, there's something that happens that I refer to as people sort of learning the wrong lessons from it. And this actually happens when a movie does well too. The folks who go to make the next movie sort of pick up on the wrong things as to why that movie worked or why it didn't work. And getting back to Last Voyage of the Demeter, when this came out and this didn't make its money back and bombed, I read a lot of sort of like online think pieces about like, oh, well, this is clearly based on this and Renfield not making its money back and Dracula Untold not making its money back. Clearly the vampire thing is over and audiences no longer want to watch movies about vampires. And that is the wrong lesson, because if that were the case, then this show would not be absolutely killing it on AMC, to the point where AMC went, while these two strikes were going on with the actors and the writers, AMC went to both of those unions and said, we will sign an independent contract with you so that we can get back to work, because this show is going to make us a lot of money and we want to get working on it again. So that's how well Interview with a Vampire is doing. So there is definitely still an appetite out there for vampires, no question. But in looking at Last Voyage of the Demeter and why it didn't make its money back, after now having gone through all of this, my hope is to show that there can be any one of a number of things that make a cocktail that can cause a movie to fail at the box office. And I have sort of my own thoughts as to why this movie didn't make its money back. One of the major ones being that there were two strikes going on at the time that this movie came out. And one of those strikes was the actors' strike. So no actors were promoting anything. None of the actors could go out and promote this movie. It wasn't on any of the talk show circuits. There were no little electronic press kits online. So there was no buzz about this film coming from the actors' side. Additionally, the movie industry is still bouncing back from the pandemic. So ticket sales are just down in general. And to be honest, ticket sales were already going down before the pandemic happened. The pandemic just happened to exacerbate all of that. And I think part of the reason why ticket sales are down, and this is just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, but prior to the advent of the internet, movie theaters were a place where teenagers would go, because teenagers are actually not allowed to be anywhere, or at least in America, they're not. And so, you know, purveyors of restaurants and stuff like that don't want groups of teenagers hanging out. It scares away the other customers. The teenagers don't have that much money. And so teenagers, in order to congregate with one another and have a social life, they need to go somewhere. And the movie theater was a place where they could go. So a lot of movies for decades were made to get that teenage audience in. But now with cell phones, teenagers no longer have to be together to be together. They can all be sitting at home in their bedrooms and connecting with one another all day long. So that secondary reason why people went to the movie theaters so much in the past no longer exists. If you look at this movie's advertising, the trailers and everything, it looks like a very scary movie, but there's nothing about, and they even went out of their way, like they cast it, like I say, cast it with some great actors. They had people of all different ethnicities. They figured out a way to put somebody of the female persuasion onto the Demeter, which, if you've read chapter 7 of Dracula, there are no girls on that boat. But they figured out a good way to do that. So there was representation in it, but there wasn't, it was very clear from the trailer that there wasn't going to be any romance story. And without stereotyping anybody, half of the audience is not as interested in going to see that movie because of that. And it doesn't help the fact that it was very clear in the trailer that the dog dies. So, like, for example, my wife was like, nope, as soon as she saw that in the trailer. So stuff like that. Plus, it looks like it's about a group of very scruffy dudes who are always sweaty and dirty working on a boat for a whole movie. And so you really have to be into the fact that they're all going to die by the hands of a monster. And that's a good size audience, but it is definitely not the large audience that you want to come and see it. So all of that to say that all of those things could feed into the reason why people didn't go see it. But I think the biggest reason why not is that Barbenheimer just happened to suck all the oxygen out of the summer. There was no sort of websites or all that the movie websites and trades wanted to cover was Barbenheimer because it was a runaway success. Oh God, I'm blanking on her name now, of course, because it's early in the morning here in America. But Greta Gerwig, who was the director of Barbie, was suddenly the highest grossing female director of all time. And not only that, but then suddenly Barbie was the highest grossing movie Warner Brothers has ever released. And that's what was sexy to talk about in the trades and online. And Last Voyage of the Demeter just kind of happened to come out at the time where it couldn't get any promotion at all. So having said all of this, we can put all of these elements together. And the point that I want to get at here at the very end is that even with all of that, I'm still wrong about why this movie didn't make its money back. Because based on everything that I laid out, there are things that happened on this movie that we will never know. We will never know the process by which this went from a book. I don't mean Dracula. It was actually adapted into a book called The Last Voyage of the Demeter by a modern author within the last 10 years. And that's what was optioned. We have no idea what happened from that moment up to the point that it came out in theaters. So whatever I speculate, I probably have the story completely wrong. And that is essentially the thesis that I'm ultimately going for. Thank you very much for sitting and listening to this whole thing. Like I said, my name is Sean Rourke. My channel is The Vampire's Castle. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you guys today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Yes, let me just say a few words as well, since I introduced Sean and made him do this presentation as well, although he wasn't resisting too much. Thank you so much. That was fantastic, really, and not just for me because I'm into films, but it was just such a fantastic insight into the whole business, something that a punter from the street doesn't see. And what a cruel business it is. And that's one thing. But when you hear all these stages, you just come to appreciate every single movie that you see, I guess. Or at least for a while, we will be looking at films with a different eye. And so thank you so much. That was really brilliant, really interesting. I'm not sure if you're right or not. So how you finished your presentation was very funny as well. But even if you're wrong, it was really informative and really a fantastic insight into the whole story. So we want to hear more, and I'm glad that it's recorded because we will be listening to it over and over again. Guys, I can see questions already. By the way, when I was introducing Sean, I forgot to mention the obvious. When we met in Cardiff last year for the festival, Sean was there to present his newly made vampire film. You can see a bit of a poster behind him, Lucy X Mina, and that's the film that we watched last year, which was fantastic. That was a short film, and I believe it's available on your platform now for everyone to see.
That's right.
So
it is on YouTube. It is 17 minutes long, so feel free to come by and watch it at your leisure.
Oh, that's very interesting take on Mina and Lucy from the modern perspective as well. So I'll thoroughly recommend it. And now for the questions, guys. I saw that Brian was wanted to say something.
That was a great presentation, yes. Sean. How are you?
Thank you.
Oh, now I see myself on Hagda's monitor. That was strange. Lots of stuff I had not known. But I have a two-part question, and they both have to do with the money side of it. First of all, I wonder how the number is arrived at. That is the goal, because I know of friends who have worked on films that made their money back and even made a profit, but didn't hit whatever that goal number was, and therefore were considered a failure. And as a small
Right.
business person. I consider it a success if I make more money than I spend, but they
you would
didn't.
think, yeah.
And then my second question is, I would have thought by 2023, with all the actuaries in the world and all the predictive models, that opening weekend wouldn't be as big of a deal as it used to be. But it sounds like it still kind of rules the fates of all these movies. And I'm not quite sure why opening weekend is such a big deal when it's clear that there are other ways for films to make up their finances and even turn a profit.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and those are excellent questions. And it's wonderful to see you in person, Brian. So yeah, let me take them one at a time. The first question about how that number is reached, as to like, this is what our goal is in order to make a sequel. The answer to that is, it's sort of different for every movie. There's some sort of whispered about room somewhere in Hollywood where a group of very predictive mathematician accountants are able to speculate how much money a movie could make, and then when they get closer to the release date, how much it actually will, based on a whole lot of tracking and polling. In terms of what that magic number needs to be, it depends on who the investors in the movie are, who the distributor is, what percentages everybody has to be paid out for it. But usually it's generally they need to make back not only the production budget, also the P&A budget, but also take into account that the theaters themselves take a huge portion of the box office the opening weekend. And then after that, the movie company makes, actually, I retract that statement, because I don't know what the deals are going on currently. But what it used to be was that the distributor would make the majority of the money that opening box office weekend, and then their cut of it would diminish and diminish and diminish with every subsequent week that the movie was in theaters. So it was advantageous for the theaters to keep the movie in theaters longer, because then they could sell more tickets that they would get the money off of, and they could sell more popcorn and soda. I don't know exactly how it works now, but I think with theater sales falling, the distributors had to sort of open that up and say, okay, you guys are going to make a lot more of the box office the opening weekend, so that it's worth you to program these movies in. So somewhere in there is where they land on that number of this is how well it needs to do. And in response to the question of why is that opening weekend of box office so important, it's an excellent question, because I don't want anybody here to worry about Last Voyage of the Demeter making its money back. Eventually it will, and it will turn a profit due to coming out on DVD and Blu-ray, and it'll go onto HBO, and it'll play on airplanes and cruise ships, and then the whole rental market. And so it will eventually make its money back over time. But the opening weekend is sort of like the ultimate bellwether of how successful the movie is going to be in the long term. And so that's why they look at that number. And even those of us in the movie industry, a lot of times you're just like, why is everyone spending so much energy just trying to get that opening weekend so high, when the movie is clearly going to make money for the rest of its life? I mean, somebody's still making money off of Bugs Bunny cartoons that were made in the 1940s. So it's a good question. That's, I think, kind of what the answer is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All
Great
right.
presentation.
I'm looking forward to, thank you. I'm looking forward to your talk tomorrow.
If you can get up that early, I would love to see your face in the audience.
Excellent.
I can see Enrique, but we've got Ellen, who's been raising her hand for a long time. Ellen, please.
Hi.
Hello, good to see you again.
Yes, we met yesterday, and I was looking forward to see you speaking about your project. And one doubt that I had during your presentation was you talked a lot about Brad, you know, this character that goes around looking for pitches, screenplays, etc. And I would like to know if he already has a demand from the studio before looking for the material, or he just looks around for everything, and when the studio goes, hey, I need some romance, some new book, or I don't know, some new action movie, he remembers what he had looking for, and was like, and be like, hey, I have this because I looked back then. I'd like to
Yeah,
know that. Oh, I'm sorry.
that's an excellent question. And the answer is yes and no. So generally, the production company that we will say Brad works for makes a particular type of movie, and that could be a production company that makes just horror movies. That's their model. That's how they know how to make their money back. Or it could be a production company that makes very sweet movies about young people finding love and getting married against opposition, or it could be movies that are shot for $200 million and they're hoping to make $1 billion at the box office on them. So each of those production companies is looking for sort of what movie is going to fit their mission statement the most. But you're right in the fact that they also want to diversify what properties they option, so that when somebody like Warner Brothers or Disney or whomever comes to them and says, based on Barbie, I'm looking for a movie about a toy. What do you got? And so if you have already optioned some toy line that is sort of an up and coming toy line, you can say, oh my God, there's a lot of buzz around this action figure. We already have the rights to this. We already have a script that's written. We've got all this concept art. This is ready to go. That puts them in an excellent position, a better position than, okay, now we got to go out and find somebody who has that. And a lot of times they will make that call. They'll call around to agents and say, send over anybody you've got who's working on a movie about an action figure that already exists. And then agents will send a variety of people that they think will represent that. But that is sort of being late to the game. And Hollywood is notorious for what we call chasing lightning. Something will do really well on its opening weekend, and every distributor is like, I want one of those. We need one of the, I mean, for the last 15 years, like every streaming platform has been like, we need our Game of Thrones. And so we've seen, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power come out, and The Witcher, and Wheel of Time, and all of these other, shows that are ostensibly like Game of Thrones. And those are all situations where somebody already had that option that they had already bought, or they had to go out and chase down that project and option it before somebody else could. So it's sort of an exciting sort of like feeding frenzy that happens around any given weekend. And you're in a better spot if you've already got something. So there are a lot of production companies that just option a whole bunch of stuff and hang on to it. And an option is, I think it's usually for four to 8 years, depending on how it gets negotiated. But you can sit on a project for that long without it actually going into production and still use that as one of your chess pieces before the rights expire and it goes back to the original creator. Does that answer your question?
Totally. You even gave me an expression that I didn't know, like they're chasing the lightning. I never heard of it before. So it was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Even and when you said, and the second part of my question, but your answer was really great. The second part is the Marvels are coming up to the movies, and I would like to know, like, what do you there was the strike of the actors and the screenplay, so they can't promote the movie, and people on the Twitter and social media I guess, yeah, social media are saying like, hey, this movie is not gonna make a great weekend. They are like predicting it so hard on the social media, like, oh, it's not gonna make it, it's not gonna make it. And the movie, I don't know, like, Marvel movies are, Marvel and DC movies are like getting lower and lower on their first weekends, and I really don't like how people are like, oh, it's not gonna make it, and I'm like, hey guys, just watch the movie. Stop trying to predict it. Like, it's directed by a great director that I really love, so please just so I would like just to talk about my protest here about this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly I can say about any of that because I do work for Marvel on a regular basis, and there's I'm not allowed to say, but there is a chance that maybe I did work on the Marvels. So I can't really comment on that particular movie or Marvel movies in general, but you definitely, I mean, you are reading into something that is definitely something that is very new to the movie business, and that is the sort of the online buzz about a movie, and very specifically there being rabid fans on social media that can change the course of how a movie gets released based on what the conversation is that is going on in aggregate online. So yes, you are right to be worried about whatever movie you want to be worried about, whether it be review bombing or, you know, whatever it is. Having said that, let me also say this, that for example, a movie that I didn't work on was The Dark Knight Returns, or I'm sorry, The Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan movie, where when they announced that Heath Ledger was going to be playing the Joker, the online Batman community went crazy against that decision. They were like, he is a terrible choice for the Joker. This is an absolute travesty. You were ruining my childhood. And they were like that for a year up until the movie came out. And after that opening weekend, the conversation was Heath Ledger is the best Joker that there has ever been. So all of that to say that the online conversation can really have it wrong up until the proof is always going to be in the pudding. But you're right, the online conversation can help to determine how a movie does its opening weekend. So
yes,
yeah,
and Heath Ledger was a great Joker.
He was, yeah, absolutely.
He was. And I don't know if we could do that, but I would love to change contact with you to show my work about representation on Marvel movies, because I think like if you liked Blade, I think you'll like the rest of it.
Lovely.
So.
Yes, you can reach me. I mean, I can tell you what my email address is right now. It's Sean@thevampirescastle.com, or you can just go to thevampirescastle.com, and my email address is there, and you can just click on email me, and just tell me who you are and where you saw me, and I will be happy to talk to you as long as you want to talk.
It's Ellen, the fan of the Marvels.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we should probably move on. By the way, we're going to delete all the comments about Marvel for the sake of preserving your job. Enrique, please.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm good, man.
For this awesome presentation, I was very drawn into it, and it is you talk about it with so much passion, and we appreciate having you here. Thank you for your presentation. But I have a critique regarding the position of the movie business in general, because as you well know, Hollywood is a big business, but it's also a powerful cultural speaker for all over the world. Hollywood movies are not for only for America. We see it in Mexico. We can see it in Romania. We can see it in China even. So it's a global phenomenon of culture, and they normally have this clash of priorities between business and art, no, and normally business wins, and I believe it's that's the cookie crumble, as you said in the United States. But my point is this: I was so excited for this time for Hollywood and the relations with Dracula, but as you all said, Dracula is a phenomenon that comes back every 30 years in Hollywood. It's amazing how it started in the 30s with Bela Lugosi, then in the 60s with the Hammer films, then in the 90s with Francis Ford Coppola, and we have it. We have 3 opportunities for Dracula to come out this year, and we totally flop it because of the business. We have Renfield from Universal Studios. I believe the Demeter, it was also from the Universal. They have one of the greatest IPs in the movie business, which is the Universal Monsters. But they don't embrace the franchises, and they are only listening to numbers that no one cares, actually, you know. I think the movie, the Demeter, flopped because 2 big errors: the lack of the name of Dracula in the title. You know, Dracula is a powerful IP, a very powerful IP. Demeter, who talks about the Demeter, you know? So that was a very important piece of information that people lacked in order to go to the movies. Dracula is a bestseller. You can go to whatever bookstore right now, and you can acquire 5 or 6 different editions in the same place. So it has room for everything. And my point is, Renfield was actually a flop because although they have this powerful machinery of movie business, they lacked the understanding that maybe what we fans need is a better product. You know, I am critiquing from my point of view with this obsession of the transmedia of the book into another media. So I went very excited to see the Demeter movie, and the first scene I was blown away because I said, finally I'm seeing an extension of the narrative in a movie. The first scene when the singers got the boxes and placed it into the Demeter, I was blown away, you know, because of the realism, because I was in the right place. But suddenly that finished because it was a bad movie. It was a bad script writing. It has a lot of representative issues that doesn't apply to Dracula. No, a woman in a ship. It's obviously a misunderstanding of the history. A black man in a ship also is an understanding of the history, and those being the heroes, it's the same pattern that Marvel movies follow. That it's going to they are losing fans all over the place because they meant more into the politics, they meant more into the representation than into the art form. So the word of mouth is very powerful advertisement, and if the product is not good, it doesn't matter how much money studios put into the advertisement. It's not going to be a successful. to be honest, I'm waiting for the third chance, which is the remake of Nosferatu that it's in production.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about in a personal place, and with this obsession of mine of the transmedia of the narrative into on other medias. You know, I know I'm not the best critic. Sorry about that.
Well, no, that's absolutely. It's good to hear you say all of that, because obviously I've been following you for a long time, and you know your artwork and your sort of your mission statement about trying to represent the novel in the most accurate way possible, and nothing you said is wrong at all, and certainly. One thing that I don't think that this generation has gotten yet, and your 30-year cycle, I believe that entirely. And if there's one glimmer of hope that I would like to present, it's that we have yet to see this generation's actual adaptation of the book. We've seen a modern day movie that has Dracula and Renfield in it. We have seen an expansion of chapter 7 that was made to try and be palatable to an audience who doesn't necessarily know all of the chapters that go around it. We have seen, you know, Dracula Untold, which is an origin story that is not the book. So we haven't actually seen any, minus, you know, what Mark Gatiss did with the Netflix show, but that was a wildly divergent adaptation of it that, you know, Magda has argued very well that I won't even try to come close to that. But I think that we are still waiting to see that version of the novel itself for this next generation. So I'm sure it's still coming. I'm sure it's still coming. It's just going to be a matter of wading through global pandemics and union strikes and the whims of also one of the other things that I just wanted to say real quick is that I also think that the audience at large is changing, whereas for the last you know, almost 100 years, the audience has been accustomed to going to see a story in the movie theater that is 90 minutes long. Mm-hmm. But now with the advent of streaming, audiences are accustomed to seeing a movie that is 10 hours long. And they're accustomed to long character arcs and very deep, intricate plot lines that take hours and hours and hours to resolve. So once you are steeped in that for a couple of years, then going to the movie theater and watching a story that takes place in 2 hours seems like it's rushed. And so I think that is part of what is changing. And so hopefully that adaptation of Dracula that happens is a movie that is awesome, or it's a series that is awesome.
Yeah. It's an audiovisual. It doesn't matter if it's on a movie or on streaming platforms, but a narrative, a visual narrative, very appealing with the novel. No?
Yeah, I would love to see that too.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Enrique.
Okay, thank you very much, Enrique. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment here. I find it really fascinating.
I just wanted to thank very much.
Enrique, can you hear me, guys? Can you hear me, guys? Or
yeah.
Have I disappeared?
Yeah.
Sorry, can I finish this sentence, Yuri?
Sorry.
Just wanted to comment on what Enrique said, and Sean, what you were talking about earlier, because Enrique's saying that I read it as you're considering not completely necessary to bend the book, like you have this black person on the ship and the woman on the ship and so on, and this is a tendency that we have in the 21st century, especially in the recent years, that these things are happening on the screen. So I know that a lot of people is complaining about it, but again, I think that the young generation understands it better than maybe old people like us do. I think this is the generational thing, actually. But I do agree with with one thing, that if there was the name of Dracula in both of these films, because we are going to see all these films anyway. I mean, people who
Right.
are interested in the story and who are Dracula specialists, but it would attract more attention from the people who are not necessarily so closely connected to that. Just on the personal note, I watched both of these films, Renfield and The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and I absolutely adored both of them. Although one was as silly as can be, the other was very serious. On the other hand, and as you said, not much was happening apart from a bunch of guys walking around the ship for 2 hours. And also, I do understand, as always, I do understand your wife, Sean, because this dog scene was absolutely unacceptable.
That's right. That's right.
But well, that was supposed to be a gothic horror, so something like it was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But to be honest, when the film finished and we have the image, spoilers, sorry, we have the image of the captain going after Dracula into the town, and they stopped, and I said, why? That's where the action starts. So I'm guessing that there is not going to be the continuation of this film if it flopped so badly, because I wasn't aware of the figures before.
Yeah, I
No
don't
hope for
think
that.
so. I don't think we're ever going to see where that story was going to go. We'll just have to be happy with the book.
Yeah, well, anyway, I was very happy with the film already, so yeah. And thank you very much, Sean, for this presentation. That was absolutely outstanding.
Oh, my
Really
pleasure.
enjoyed that. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys. I'm
Thank you
going
for
to
having me here.
just say, bravo.
I loved it. I
Uh,
loved it. Perfect.
Yeah, very
Thank
nice
you.
Yes,
presentation. Thank you very much.
Before you guys go, because we're here in Brasov, we need to run, and the next presentation, Yuri will take you through it, and the power is in his hands now. I'm actually going to switch off hosting and do as you please with the with the rest of the day, because we have to run. We have the festival to attend, so I'm just waving goodbye. I'll have a good evening, guys.
Good luck, guys.
Bye-bye, Magda. Thank you very much. I loved your presentation. I'm not going to make lots of observations and questions because you already dedicated good part of your answers to my young researcher, Alan. So I feel glad that you answered questions. But I just have one interesting observation. I have another student that she's a journalist and she loves gossip. And she was loving your presentation, but suffering a lot because of the lack of names of your presentation. So
yeah, sorry about that. That's unfortunately the one payoff for giving an insider's look is that I'm only allowed to talk about certain things. So yeah, I perhaps someday I'll be able to tell all of those stories. I wish I could tell you guys all those stories. Oh my God. But yeah, I'm afraid those have to stay under lock and key. So
yeah.
My apologies to your student.
We'll talk about this next year, maybe in Brasov.
That would be great. Yeah, that would be cool.
So thank you very much, Hans. Thank you very much for all in your presentations and all the questions. Now we're moving on. We're going to pass a video that's the next presentation brought. It's Michael Torregrossa from the Bristol Community College. His presentation is The Count and Camelot, Representations of Dracula in the Monstrous Matter of Britain. So I have Roberto over here with me. Roberto is going to share his presentation. And before we set play, let me just say a few notes about Michael's bio. So Michael is a graduate of medieval studies program at the University of Connecticut and works as an adjunct instructor of writing and literature courses in both Rhode Island and Massachusetts. His researches focus on popular culture's adaptation, appropriation, and transformation of literary classics, including the Arthurian legends, Beowulf, Dracula, Frankenstein, Robin Hood stories, and the works of writers like H.P. Lovecraft, William Shakespeare, and H.G. Wells. In addition to these pursuits, Michael is the founder of the Alliance for Promotion of Research on the Matter of Britain and the Association for the Achievement of Scholarship and Teaching of the Medieval in Popular Culture. He also serves as editor for these organizations, various blogs, and moderator of their discussion lists, and leads the development of their conference activities. Beside this work, Michael is active in the Northeast Popular Culture American Culture Association and organizes sessions for their annual conference in the fall. Since 2019, Michael has been an EPCA's Monster and Monstrous area chair, but he previously served as the Fantastic area chair, a position he held from 2009 to 2018. Most recently, Michael has become a member of the Council of New England American Studies Association and contributes to groups planning of events. So, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have Michael personally over here, but we'll have the video he recorded for us. Beto, whenever you can set play.
Hi, my name is Michael Torregrossa. My presentation is called The Count and Camelot. Share my screen. Okay. Make this bigger. Okay. So again, oops, sorry. My presentation is The Count and Camelot, Representations of Dracula and the Monstrous Matter of Britain. So just to start, enter freely and of your own will. This is Count Dracula says to Jonathan Harker at the start of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So Dracula and King Arthur, an Arthurian monster mashup, right? For most individuals, the subject of my paper may seem impossible, or at least improbable. However, the stories and legends about both Dracula and King Arthur are part of the cauldron of story. As J.R. Tolkien famously described the creative process in his essay on fairy stories from 1947. According to Tolkien, this metaphorical vessel has always been boiling, and to it have continually been added new bits, dainty and undainty, so unlimited elements such as the 15th century Romanian nobleman, best remembered by history for his cruelty and given new life as a blood-draining vampire by an Irish writer in the late 19th century, and a medieval king who stands at the center, a millennium and a half old body of stories full of pageantry and magic, might conceivably come into contact at least once, if not multiple times, given the proclivity of creators to blend fictional worlds, either for sheer whimsy or more with a direct design in mind. The history of both characters is complex. Dracula's story has expanded greatly since Stoker's writing, while fascination with Arthur's life and legend has never dimmed. Separately, tales about Dracula and King Arthur were especially popular during the 20th century, and they seem likely to remain in vogue during the current one. Thrust into the spotlight following the publication of Dracula in 1897, Count Dracula or Stoker dubbed Vlad III's the undead incarnation, as the best known representative of the new race. His rise began in dramatic adaptations, but it is from his prominence as one of the horror film genre's first movie stars, and of course to Bela Lugosi's now famous portrayal of the character, that Dracula was able to successfully conquer the various worlds of mass media, despite Stoker's monstrous reimagining of the figure. Now, there is numerous incarnations. Dracula is loved and beloved by fans and patrons. In contrast to the vampire overlord, the appeal of Arthur is perhaps better understood. It's not horrific, sexy, or uncute as Dracula has been depicted in various 100+ years of his career as one of the undead. Instead, the rich work is the center of a rich story and about by Tommy Jefferson, full of knights, damsels, wizards, and witches, and monsters. And Arthur is often remembered for his title as the once creature king, has a played true staying power to emerge as an equally important figure in popular culture, as his own legend continues to expand internationally, with no sign of abatement despite 15 centuries of existence. However, the fact that both Dracula and Arthur have potential story elements is only part of my concern. For as Tolkien reminds us, if we speak of a cauldron, we must not wholly forget the cooks. That is, the creators, or perhaps better, the combiners of stories. There are many things in the cauldron, Tolkien continues, but the cooks do not dip in the ladle quite blindly. Their selection is important. In an attempt to show the coming together of Dracula with matter-driven does not appear wholly accidental. So for my purposes, this essay, we need to accept that there exists a monster in matter-driven, roughly shadowy sub-tradition intertwined with more familiar tales of Arthur's knights, the paramours, and the other residents of Camelot. In the larger Arthurian tradition are also stories of the preternatural. Sometimes these narratives have major effects on the Arthurian world, such as the life of the demon's fallen Merlin, Arthur's counsel and aid, but also at other times these tales are merely episodes of a much longer career of a more renowned Arthurian figure, such as Arthur's battle, as first told by Geoffrey Monmouth in his story Regnum Britanniae, 1136, with the giant of Mont Saint Michel, his nephew Gawain's encounter with the Green Knight, in the work now known as Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, late 15th, 14th century, his wife Guinevere's visit by her ghostly and ghastly depicted mother in the Haunters of Arthur, late 14th or early 15th century, or Lancelot, Galahad, or many other of Arthur's knights' frequent temptations by demons in their quest for the Holy Grail, from the late 12th to late 15th centuries. Post-medieval matter-driven has adopted different of the monsters of medieval Arthuriana, such as these, but it also has appropriated monsters of more recent origins, including undead figures like zombies, Frankenstein's creature, and vampires, again including Dracula, which are essentially the products of modern creative artists. Undead Arthuriana is especially interesting addition to the modern matter-driven. For this sub-tradition, displays motifs that reoccur throughout a wealth of text, suggesting the creation and continuance of a distinct transmedia tradition. Whether conscious of this work or not, the cooks, as Tolkien refers to the creators, are doing something worth our notice. Modern Arthuriana is filled with vampires. In Arthurian characters, the descendants and surrogates frequently interact with vampiric beings in works of modern popular culture, including films, novels, short stories, television programs, and a larger sort of comic books. Given his prominence, it is perhaps not surprising that the most traditional and most frequent vampire encounter of strange figures is Dracula himself. Made popular by Stoker's novel, The Dracula of Popular Culture, including his appearances in works of undead Arthuriana, reflect several approaches towards depicting the character. Sometimes he's meant to be the historic Latin third, a warrior and beloved leader of his people, but the men presented in these works, such as the film Dracula Untold, are ultimately transformed into vampires to provide a series of origins for Stoker's character. At other times, Dracula is more clearly Stoker's counterpart, the vampiric invader of England, but most often he is the suave and well-dressed Count Dracula of the Universal Studios, portrayed by Lugosi and his countless imitators, both serious and comedic. Lastly, Dracula might be the sympathetic Dracula, played by Gary Oldman or Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1952, the first film for American mass audiences to address Dracula's past as Vlad III. Again, a new interpretation of Stoker's story as an impetus for his actions in the present. To begin, Dracula makes many of his appearances in undead Arthuriana in connection with Rourke, the prime ambassador of Camelot in mass media. Most of these works present direct contact between Merlin and Dracula. For example, the mage first encounters Dracula in Fred Sinclair's Dominion, 1982, the fifth book of the author's Dracula series. Here Merlin has lost his memory and his powers due to a spell cast centuries ago by Vivian in Lady Lake, when she ensnared the besotted mage, a story first recounted in Arthurian romances of the 13th century and later immortalized in Tennyson. And Merlin finds himself in present-day Chicago. He was assisted in regaining his magic by disguised Dracula. The wizard and vampire join forces to recover the sword Excalibur, seen on the cover, and Dracula uses it to destroy Vivian to save Merlin and stop even plans for world domination. To continue, Merlin has further dealings with Dracula in the comics, the medium most active in promoting undead Arthuriana. He has again teamed up with Dracula in Fates 5, four-issue comic book series by Richard Medici, published in 1996. Series is similar in approach to Alan Moore's The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, begun 3 years later. In an unlikely pairing, Merlin and Vlad Dracula, along with 3 other literary characters, including Frankenstein's creature, are gathered together to save the Earth from an extraterrestrial menace that threatens to destroy the world. Each hero agrees to help in exchange for goods presented upon the victory. Here, Dracula is arguing reunion with his wife Elizabeth, a name similar to the one given to his bride in Coppola's film. Although Brindisi's representation of Dracula is unique, there are further parallels to Bram Stoker's Dracula film. For example, while engaged in battle in issue number 2, Dracula employs strategies similar to those used by his filmic counterpart by mimicking his transformation into column of rats that quickly overcome his opponents. Similarly, Dracula in Fates 5 displays in issues numbers 3 and 4 a humanoid bat form reminiscent of the film. More recently, Merlin and Dracula, though they not physically, have allied a third time in Frank J. Barberi's Five Ghosts comic book series from 2013 to 2015. Series centers on adventurer Fabian Gray, seen on the top there, who had had an accident with a mystic artifact in the past and discovered that he could channel the skills and abilities of a set of fictional legendary figures, the Five Ghosts of the title, shown down the bottom one. At times he employs the sorcery of the mage, and other occasions the speed and savagery of the vampire are required. On a related note, Merlin is also friendly towards Dracula's children in several works. His first overture to these vampires occurs in director Freddie Francis's feature film Son of Dracula from 1974. The apparently forgotten Arthurian film, and one not to be confused with the 1953 continuation of Universal's Dracula of the same name. For his film, Francis says former Beatle Ringo Starr take on the role of the Arthurian mage, complementing singer Harry Nilsson as Count Down, the eponymous offspring of Dracula. The tradition of Universal Studios recognized for Meet Up and Son Dracula borrows many of its characters from classic horror films and places them into the same shared world, but Down is a creation of the filmmakers. As Dracula's child, he is the destined heir to the throne of the Netherworld, the realm of supernatural creatures and monsters. As ruler of the monster world, Dracula's role recalls his desires in the stop-motion animated film Mad Monster Party from 1967, as well as his position in the later television special The Halloween That Almost Wasn't from 1979. Two works that also appropriate the monster universe created by Universal. But Merlin's present is unexpected humor. Frustrating their first team-up, the exact relationship between the peers is unclear in the film. Though reminiscent of his taking care of Arthur after his father Uther has died in traditional Arthurian tales, Merlin assumes a mentoring role towards Down upon the death of his father Dracula. In addition, Merlin twice in the film claims the denizens of the Netherworld are his children. It is not clear whether he means this literally, suggesting the possibility of a familial tie down, or figuratively. Nevertheless, the mage takes direct action when the realm is threatened. The film takes place in two time periods. First, it opens in the 19th century. Here, Baron Frankenstein seeks in reverse of his position in Mad Monster Party to become the overlord of the Netherworld, and he sends associated dwarvish Igor to murder Count Down, who resembles the vampire or Murnau's Nosferatu rather than more handsome depiction of Dracula. However, Frankenstein's plans are foiled by the birth of Down to Dracula's heir. Similar to his role in protecting the future King Arthur, in Arthurian text, Merlin again spends about 100 years watching over Down, preparing him to take over Dracula's duties. Following these scenes, the remaining action of the film occurs in modern-day London. In the present, on the eve of his coronation, Down is conflicted about his future. As Merlin surmises, explaining, "But his human instincts have taken over your soul. You feel perhaps you cannot face your heritage. Given the opportunity to open up, Down, who grew up in the mortal world, pretending to be a human musician, and wishes, as he later explains, he was able to give and accept love, now proclaims to Merlin, I would do anything to be born. Merlin then declares, you have a choice. Down decides he wants to be human rather than a vampire. The wizard warns him that once humanized, he will no longer be immortal. Merlin then sends Down to see Frankenstein and claims he can't perform the operation, but promises that Down will retain his immortality. Once Down departs, however, Frankenstein reveals his true plans to murder the heir apparent and finally take control of the Netherworld. Merlin, meanwhile, uses a scrying device, spies upon Frankenstein, and witnesses his duplicity. The action thereafter revolves around a turn plan devised by Merlin, as revealed in the film's conclusion, in which he assumes the disguise of Dr. Van Helsing, a character whose name is indebted to the vampire hunter from Stoker's novel, but here is a friend to the undead rather than a foe. Van Helsing offers to humanize Down, but to meet his desire to love rather than immortality goes to Frankenstein. Moving to the close of the film, Down agrees to Van Helsing's procedure. Frankenstein puts several obstacles in the path to its success. First, he attempts to steal the transfusion device needed for the surgery, and Van Helsing/Merlin sends his own agent for him. Then Frankenstein hopes to sabotage the machine itself. He's able to do so because Merlin has cast a spell of infallibility upon it. Finally, Frankenstein tries to kidnap the girl that Down seeks to love, but Merlin sends aid to rescue her, and so she can take part in the process by sharing her humanness with Down. A sacrifice echoed in Young Frankenstein released later in the year. In the end, the procedure in Son Dracula is a success, and Down must reveal his transformation to his subjects. He relinquishes both his throne and all connection to the supernatural realm. However, his subjects rebel and he is forced to destroy them. The film concludes with Merlin revealing his masquerade as Van Helsing to Frankenstein, and then punishing Frankenstein for his wickedness. The rule of the netherworld remains an unresolved issue. As down his beloved walk off in the bright sunshine of a brand new day. Moving on, as he continues to aid Dracula over the course of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, Merlin also remains a helper to other offspring of Dracula, as noted in the Mini Monsters, a humorous serial narrated for the animated series The Comic Strip from 1987-88. Produced by Rankin Bass, the studio responsible for My Monster Party, The Mini Monsters is another homage to Universal's classic horror series. Critically said Camp Minimon is summer camp for the prepubescent sons and daughters of famous movie monsters, including Dracula's young son, Dracula. I believe it's Drakey. Merlin's own offspring, the equally non-canonical Melvin, features throughout the series as well, as does the Wizard's Familiar, who's also new to the series, Tuggen Crone Caulfield. And Melvin is the young boy with the magician's cap. Caulfield is standing next to him with the vest. The second panel has got Drakey in the middle, with the widow's peak and the red cape on. Being a monster, boy wizard, and two human friends have a number of comic misadventures during time at Minimon. In most episodes, Melvin is called upon his father, who functions as a Deus Ex Machina figure, to set things right. While some works of Undead Earth are 100% Merlin in cooperation with Dracula and his family, others are for the reverse. In these texts, the third mage is no longer an ally to the undead. Merlin instead leads the battle against vampiric forces. For example, in Young Dracula Prayer of the Vampire from 1998, comic book series for mature readers by Gareth Francis, Merlin's identity as the biblical figure Cardophilius has been cursed with eternal life as part of the crucifixion. Now he's a demonic thing and sets his sights on Dracula. More traditional Merlin meets another version of Dracula in the two series of Ron Leary Jr.'s comic book Vampire Bane, Lord of Night, both published in '96. The Dracula character on the far side is called Alucard, and although Leary has not continued the series or revealed his further history, the character appears to be Dracula. Like the Dracula couple is filmed, he is a warrior who turns his back on God following the death of his family and becomes a vampire to avenge them. In addition, the name Alucard, Dracula spelled backwards, is often adopted as an alias by the Count himself, as originated, again despite its title, in the Universal Studios feature film Son of Dracula from '43, again not to be confused with Francis's later film. The primary action of Vampire Bane series occurs in 1925, when the Wizard of Camelot, seen in the first slide here, again in a mentoring role, trains an adult Anastasia Romanoff in the future Vampire Bane Wolf, again both seen on the cover, in a use of superhuman powers, which the peer later used to fight Nazis. Flashback in that issue also depicts Merlin in medieval times battling Alucard, the vampire later responsible, at least according to Leary, for the rise of the Third Reich. Here Merlin prophesies that Alucard will be destroyed by Wolf, and Merlin has a hand in this. Potion made by Merlin in Series 2 is responsible in part in transforming Wolf into the undead. Finally, Merlin also continues to struggle against Dracula in siblings Adam and Christian Baronak's 4-issue comic series Dracula vs. King Arthur, where he operates as an equal analog to Stoker's Van Helsing, seeking to understand and defeat the undead menace and prevent Dracula from conquering Camelot. Baronak's work is important because it depicts Dracula interacting with the larger Arthurian cast. This series from 2005 to 2006, collected in 2007, they've issued a variety of electronic media since then. Dracula encounters many familiar figures from the background and transforms the majority, notable exception of Merlin and King Arthur, into vampires like himself. First issue sets the series premise in which Lucifer transforms Vlad III into a vampire and sends him to Camelot to ally with the sorceress Morgana, the Baronak's version of Morgan Fay, and bring about Arthur's downfall. In return, the devil promises power, immortality, and, most important for our purposes, Camelot. As he states, "We make it into your kingdom, into the kingdom you are due." First, Lucifer must convince Vlad that God has forsaken him and given his favor to Arthur. He shows Vlad that his wife, who, as in Bram Stoker's Dracula, committed suicide, has been condemned to hell, and that his own brother had betrayed him to his enemies, the Turks. In the joyfulness of Arthur's life, Vlad's own is a tragic tale. Instead, he accepts Lucifer's offer, and to revenge himself upon the Lord, the newly reborn Dracula is sent to 6th century Britain, who quickly makes Morgana and her son Mordred into vampires. As opposed to the usual role of Dracula as a dark seducer, there's no passion involved in his transformations. Dracula is ferocious. He temporarily kills Mordred, and having entranced Morgana, forces her to drink his blood. Meanwhile, Arthur, having received, perhaps from this for himself, vision of impending darkness, the dream departs from the grave quest and leaves Lancelot in charge of the kingdom. As Merlin begins to investigate the vampire plague that is descended upon the realm, Succeeding issues of the series pit Arthur's various knights against Dracula, without it orders ever-growing prepared forces. King of Guinevere, seen in the middle there, is also entranced and succumbs to Dracula in issue 2. After he promised her both Arthur and Lancelot, and here at least we see a hint of Dracula's romantic side. Despite Dracula's promise, Arthur remains human throughout the series, Lancelot does not. As in other works of Undead Arthuriana, Guinevere is responsible for her lover's own apparently unwilling transformation into a vampire when he comes to rescue her. Following this event, the majority of the Round Table Knights are either killed or also into vampires by the end of issue 3. As the vampire apocalypse becomes a reality for Camelot. However, Dracula is not yet done tormenting Arthur. He first steals Excalibur from the king in issue number 2, and later during attacking Camelot in issue number 3, as Lancelot overpower and kidnap Arthur. You can kind of see that on the cover from the third image. Following this, Dracula tries to charm Arthur into embracing the vampire lifestyle, but Arthur is strong enough to resist him, despite the overpowering evidence that the vampire has won. As a result of his refusal to submit his recount at the beginning of issue number 4, the final double-sized issue of the series, the king is fed upon by Dracula and his former family and friends. And held captive for a while before returning to his now desolate kingdom. Arthur is disheartened by what he sees, but he quickly finds reason to hope again. As in the film, Excalibur, power of the Grail restores him, his otherworldly agents soon reveal new techniques to combat the undead. In the end, Arthur is victorious in preserving his realm in the dream of Camelot. The king is aided by Merlin, who through his experimenting on some of the undead discovers various ways to defeat them, and by the Lady Lake, who bestows both silver and wooden swords upon Arthur to place the missing Excalibur. Set during eclipse of the sun, the final battle between the forces of good and evil takes up the remainder of the issue, with the Arthurian vampires all being defeated or destroyed at its conclusion. First, Merlin stationed at Camelot kills Morgana in mystical combat, thus eliminating her magic from the field of battle, and Arthur on the fields of Camelot kills both Mordred and Dracula, but not before being grievously wounded by his son, an act which requires his traditional departure to Avalon for healing, and to weigh his future destiny. The series then concludes similar to the closing of Stoker's novel with these words. As all legends, King Arthur and the Kingdom of Camelot will never pass away. The true tale of Britain's triumph over Dracula remains hidden, save for the few protectors of the truth, but one day the truth will be known. As Camelot endures despite the ravages of the dead. More engaging narratives occur when Dracula faces modern-day champions of Camelot, as a Volcano's Vampire State arc running through numbers 10 to 15 in the comic book series Captain Britain and My 13, published with Marvel Comics 2009. Here Dracula is stationed on the moon, strange as it seems, launches an undead army at the United Kingdom in an ill-fated attempt to create a homeland for the undead, the Vampire State of the arc's title. The realm is protected by a band of heroes, including 3 with Arthurian connections. You can see the 3 middle here. They are led by Brian Braddock, the Captain Britain of Earth 616, debuting in 1976, to the champion of the Otherworld, the creation and former tool of Merlin. He's also past member of 2 versions of the superior team of Excalibur, and the once and perhaps future successor Arthur, having both wielded the King's Sword and 4 times to this Otherworld. Braddock is joined in MI13 by Dave Whitman, the current Black Knight, and Faiza Hussein, a Muslim doctor gifted with the power to heal others. Making his first appearance in 1968, Whitman is a descendant of an Arthurian hero, the original Black Knight 1950s Marvel character, and wielder of his ancestors' weapon, the Merlin forged empty blade, and also frequently teammate of his struggles with Mordred and Morgan Le Fay. In addition, Whitman, like Braddock, is a one-time successor of Arthur. In contrast to her male teammates, Hussein is a new hero created for the series, which is an important role in the arc as the current possessor of the sword Excalibur, which is here presented, like the more expected religious artifacts, as a talisman feared by vampires and capable of destroying them. Besides Excalibur, MI13 employs an artifact more closely connected to Dracula as their primary weapon against the approaching hordes. Though it too seems inspired by one of the legends of Madame Pritchard, its resemblance to the fabled head of Brandon Bless. In number 2 of the series, the heroes recover the skull of Quincy Harker, the offspring of Jonathan Bina Harker, born to close of Stoker's novel in a famed vampire hunter in the Marvel Universe. As Brand's head is said to have defended Britain from mundane invasions, Harker's remains are part of a spell designed as one character to create an anti-invasion weapon, which forces each vampire that enters Great Britain to be invited in, as readers are reminded, individually. The heroes in MI13 are very empowered otherwise, employ multiple strategies to deceive Dracula, and are able to stop his plans through the combined power of Harker's skull and Excalibur. The arc is pivotal in Hussein's development as a hero, and all of her teammates and of all of her teammates, she is the most troubled by Dracula's attack, because he's captured her father and transformed him into one of your dead. Threatened by the vampire's inclusion of the arc, which is also the end of the series, she fully assumes her new identity as a hero, codenamed Excalibur, and steps in to face Dracula after he has dispatched Whitman, whom she secretly loves. With Dracula having harmed two people she cares for, it's no surprise that Hussein is the one who defeats Dracula by violently driving Excalibur through his heart, thus ending Dracula's most recent adventure in the Arthurian world. However, artifacts associated with the Arthurian tradition are not always harmful to the undead. For example, while the Grail is used as a weapon against vampires in some works of undead Arthuriana, other texts presented in similar relics as beneficial to the use. One such Grail appears in David Mack's comic book series Vapor Lock, Diary of a Man's Lost Soul from January 1994, where a golden chalice recovered cavalry, but perhaps not the Holy Grail, but nevertheless the cup used in the Last Supper, is a component of the spell. It is discovered at the tomb of Count Vladimir Tepish, perhaps meant to refer to Vlad Tepish, title which refers to Vlad III's fascination with killing his victims, and it's employed to grant eternal life as a principal antagonist to a vampire, who then faces Tepish's son for leadership of the vampires. Another sort of Grail is linked to Vlad Dracula, led by Bruce Davidson, the compositor of the historic Vlad III and depiction of Dracula. Dracula seeks the Judas Chalice, a sort of anti-Holy Grail, in telefilm Librarian Curse of the Judas Chalice from 2008, where it is in fact described at one point as the Holy Grail for vampires. Clues to the artifact's whereabouts are guarded by a 17th century vampire who seeks to keep it out of the hands of evil vampires like Dracula, the vampire revealed at the conclusion of the film Lesser Sire, but generally fails once it's discovered hidden in the ruins of a pirate ship, the tomb of a 19th century pirate, and located in the bayous of New Orleans. At the end of the centuries-long quest, Dracula now secures the chalice and later makes use of its unique attributes to further his own plans for the conquest of the world. One more paragraph. In conclusion, these many examples highlight the close ties that creators have forged between Dracula and the Arthurian legends. We see Dracula is an important part of the monstrous background and serves as a great vehicle to trace the patterns to be found within stories of undead Arthuriana. Thanks for your time. Stop sharing. And stop the video.
Beto, finish it.
Yes.
Okay. So that's it, guys. Applauses for Michael, even though he's not here. Well, since he's not here, there's nobody over here that can answer any questions, possible questions for him. But what we can do is anybody who has any questions or observations for Michael, we can pass him his email tomorrow, and you can send them through email for him. What do you think? Sounds like a good solution.
Totally.
Okay, so that's it. People who are already exhausted, it's been a long day. And we still have a long day tomorrow. So that's it. It was great to have you all here today. Great presentations. Thank you very much for everybody for being here until the end. And see you guys tomorrow. You are officially free.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun.
See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you then.
Oh.
Bye. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.